If you're building a no-code app, you know that the technical build is nothing without a bulletproof business strategy. We've created hundreds of hours of content, but if you only had less than an hour to learn the absolute best advice and strategic steps to launch your app, these are the most powerful moments you need. We've condensed our top strategies on validation, user testing, launch, and growth into this one video. Stop overbuilding and start planning for profit. Let's get right into the essential roadmap.
Hey, it's Kristen over at Coaching No Code Apps. We help non-technical entrepreneurs build custom apps so they can start their app-based businesses or grow their existing businesses all without coding. And if that's what you're doing, then subscribe to this channel for new videos to help you every single week. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into part one. We're over on the iPad here, and you see a line on the screen, and this line is essentially the entire time frame it's going to take you to go from your idea stage where you're at now to actually having your app launch with users on board. And we're going to go a little bit further than that too, to help you understand how to balance what happens after you launch and you start bringing users on board. So right now you're somewhere over here. Now you might have already started development, and that's fine. This is still going to apply to you, but you're over there, and we want to get you over here and ideally beyond, again, to that point where you do have users on board. And there's different stages that you're going to be going through throughout this process. So the first stage really is what I kind of call the gray zone. And this is probably somewhere that you are in right now. You might be a little bit past it, but essentially the gray zone is kind of like this uncontained period where you are just figuring things out. You don't necessarily know the best tools to use. You don't really know how long it should take you. You're kind of trying to find the time to fit everything in. Now, I have a question mark here because there's obviously not a specific amount of time this should take. It should take as little time as possible, and the goal with the rest of this video is to help you get out of that zone if that is in fact where you are. Now, the next phase is the biggest one, and this is where you're actually building your pilot app. So this is the first version of your app that you're going to bring initial test users on board so you can validate the product and continue expanding from there. Now, there are actually two phases within this stage, so we're going to put them down below here. In this first part right here, you should be focusing on the development of the app, and then right here is when you're going to focus on alpha testing. Now, ideally, this process should not take any more than about 3 months. So during this 3 months, you're developing your product, you're alpha testing your product, and you're also skill building, right? Because number one, you're learning what you need to know to get you out of that gray zone, but you're also learning how to develop an app. So you're learning how to use the no-code tools, you're learning development methodology, strategies, how to test, things like that. Once you've wrapped up that alpha testing and you have confirmed that the product you've built works, then you're actually going to go into user testing. And this is going to be your pilot and your beta testing. We're going to break this section up into two sections as well. The first, again, being that pilot testing, and then the second being the beta testing. Now, I'm going to put a time frame on this, but with a caveat. So we're going to say for the pilot and beta testing as a whole, 1 to 2 months. Now, the caveat being, depending on the feedback you get, that time frame might change. And really, you should expect it to change. It's not going to be set in stone like that for everyone. But assuming you actually get positive feedback, so you have proven your hypothesis to be true, then I would anticipate these stages taking about 1 to 2 months in total. So maybe a couple weeks for that pilot testing so you can interact with your users and get that initial product validation. And then, maybe 4 to 6 weeks through beta testing to make sure the product is adoptable and that those users can use it consistently and it really does solve the problem in an ongoing way. Now, if it's not a perfect world and you don't get the exact feedback you were looking for, well, that stage is going to take longer for both of them potentially. So when you look at this time frame, I mean, the cool thing is you can go from idea to finished with beta testing. So fully rolling out your product in less than half a year as a person without a technical background or who's at least using no-code tools. That's really cool. Now, this is an ideal scenario. Of course, there are things that could pop up. The biggest one being, hey, that, full-time job or that business you have. But this is pretty amazing that something like this can happen in such a short time. To get any users on board your app, they need to immediately know it's right for them. And in order to do that, you need to create what's called a value sentence. A value sentence is really simple. It has 3 ingredients. You need to be able to convey who your app is for, what it helps them do, and what it helps them avoid. And in order to do that, you have to have a specific ideal prospective user. You have to understand the outcome they are looking to achieve, and you have to understand the problem or a consequence or pain point that they are trying to avoid. So let's go through an example. In looking at our own website, you can see we have a headline, launch your app-based business as a non-technical entrepreneur, no coding or outsourcing required. So we have who this is for, what it helps them do, and what it helps them avoid. 3 very simple things, and when these things are put together, you can use them on, as you just saw, landing pages. You can use them to form your outreach on social media via email, any type of campaign that you use. But let's go through another example. Let's say you're building an app for local plumbing businesses. They're looking to grow their businesses, get more customers, but they are having a problem where a lot of time is wasted doing free in-home consultations for people. So maybe you're building an app to fix that. Your value sentence could be something like helping local plumbing businesses convert more customers without filling their schedules with free consultations. Okay, very clearly conveys who the app is for, what it helps them do, and what it helps them avoid. Put this value sentence together because it is going to allow your messaging, your marketing to compound and help you get more users. Okay, so the first method for ethically copying other successful apps and businesses is to sort of copy and paste their validation. It's actually a really good thing to have alternative solutions within your target market. So other apps, other companies who are solving the same problem. If they're doing it successfully and they are solving a similar problem that you're aiming to solve for the same group of people, if they're successful, if they have a share of the market and the business is growing, then you can assume that there is demand for that solution. There is a right way to copy that validation and there is a wrong way to copy it. Going back to what we very first talked about, we don't just want to copy that solution feature for feature because we're not giving that target market any reason to come to us instead of the already successful app that we're copying. So you want to copy a little bit differently. What you need to do is find gaps or holes in the existing solution or solutions, and you want to create your solution that and fill those gaps or holes. If you want to take a deep dive into this, there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, and it talks all about differentiating your product, your company versus all the other ones out there. So while you can kind of copy and paste the initial validation, which is what we're talking about here, you really want to differentiate your app once you start building it and creating your business model as a whole. The basic concept is you can be in a red ocean where you're competing with the existing solutions in your market, and the ocean is red because there's lots of bloodshed with this competition for who can gain the largest market share. Or you can differentiate yourself from all your competition in some of the ways that we talked about, and instead put yourself in a blue ocean where there's none of that nasty bloodshed. It's pretty hard to get lost when you have a roadmap. The problem is people stepping into the no-code space are usually building and launching an app for the very first time. That means not only is it hard to figure out the order of which steps they should be taking, it's hard to figure out which steps are even right to take in the first place. In other words, there's no roadmap in place, and unfortunately, this leads to really long development timeframes, expenses that are just way higher than they should be, and launches that are constantly delayed. And look, if you are building and launching an app, but you don't know how to code, it's not your development expertise you're bringing into this. It's your industry experience and your ability to help people solve a problem with an idea you have. But without a roadmap to guide you, your experience, no matter how significant it is not going to get you very far when it comes to actually launching a product. Moscow is an acronym that stands for must have, should have, could have, and won't have for now. And it's essentially just a way to help you separate all the features that you've come up with for your app into different development versions, with each version having its own goal, which we'll talk about. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is list out every single feature that you've envisioned your app having. And from there, we're gonna break all of those features up into 4 different development phases: the must-have features, the should-have features, the could-have features, and the won't-have features, at least for right now. When you start development, you're gonna focus on the must-have features first, and this is the set of features that solves the very core problem that your app is aimed to solve. And your goal with this set of features is product validation. In other words, will this core set of features solve the problem as intended? Now, that's version 1 or your pilot app. Once you get that product validation, you're going to move on to the should have features. Now, your should have features are ones that still solve the core problem, but the goal with these is for you to validate adoption for the app, so our users able to consistently use the app in real life situations to solve the intended problem. The difference between these 2 testing phases in terms of features isn't really all that significant, but with the must-have features where you're looking for product validation, this is generally going to be a pilot testing group where it is a closed testing group within a certain time-bound period where you are not quite hands-off with those users, whereas with the should-have features, the next version, those users are really taking the app and running with it a little bit more, using it on their own in real-life situations to see, are they able to adopt it? All right, from there, you're gonna move into those could-have features, and this is where you are solving that core problem better. And really, you are just looking for product enhancement. So you've gotten that product validation, you have confirmed that users are adopting the app. Now you're just making it better. You're making it more convenient to use, easier to use, maybe even more enjoyable to use. And then finally, you're gonna get to those won't have features. And this is where you are now adding on to the app. Maybe you are solving more relevant problems or maybe for more people. So we're just going to put a plus sign here. And this is where you are generally just expanding the app. Think of these as features that won't really be useful or relevant until the app is under a certain load or there's a certain volume of users on the app, maybe like groups or communities, that type of feature, or review features where unless there are a certain number of people using the app, they're just not going to be useful.
Okay, real quick here. If you're finding this helpful, we have so much more to teach you in our free extended workshop over at coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop, where we'll guide you through our 4-phased approach for going from idea to app. So if you're looking for a start to finish guide, go ahead and register for it when you're done with this video and you'll get immediate access to the training. I've got the link in the description below and on the screen right now. For now, let's head back to our lesson.
No-code tools alone aren't going to make you money. Strategic planning, project roadmaps, marketing and market entry points, business fundamentals, and so much more. All of those things are also required to ultimately help you make that money or build that revenue that you're after. Aside from diving really deeply into the technical components of building a no-code app with our own clients, we also provide them with those fundamentals too. We work on the strategic planning, on the product management. We work on the marketing, the market entry points, right? Those business fundamentals, because they all work together. I mean, if you really think about it, there are entire roles within larger companies that are solely dedicated to product management or project management or user experience design or marketing or sales, right? There's entire roles that are dedicated to that, and you are putting on the entrepreneurial hat. And right now you're handling that all on your own, or maybe with a very small team. And that requires a lot of sort of bending and molding on your part. All that's to say, no-code tools are not magic. They're not the magic bullet or solution that are going to negate the need for everything else. Ultimately, you have to show up with grit, determination, persistence, and patience in order to truly be successful with no-code tools. When you are in your planning stages with your no-code app, or you're in those early stages of development before you've launched, you need to start thinking about your user outreach. Now, the first launch you're going to be doing is your pilot launch. And your goal with this is really product validation. And so you want to have a group of pilot users ready to come on board as soon as your pilot app is ready to be launched, so that you can start getting the feedback you need and growing your app and your business. Now, a lot of people wait to start finding their first users until after that core product is finished. But you really don't want to wait on that, because ultimately you're just stalling and delaying yourself. And it's really hard to put all this energy into your development and then launch the app, but have nothing happen on the other side. And so the process that we guide our own entrepreneurs through is to start that user outreach early, and to make sure you have a pool of early access users waiting as soon as your pilot app is complete. The question is, how do you find those users? Because if you're in these earlier stages pre-launch, then putting together a whole marketing plan and doing a bunch of user outreach can sound like a lot, when at the same time you're building your app and you're learning all the new skills related to that as well. So that's why we have this really simple 3-step process to help you identify early access users, so that you don't have to put together some complicated marketing plan, and you can just more easily have those users waiting on the other side of your first launch. On my screen, you can see these 3 circles, and these circles signify the total addressable market for your no-code app. So if we take your total addressable market, and this is your target market and everyone in it, we're going to break this down first by people who are problem aware. So there is a section, or a segment rather, of your total addressable market that is problem aware. That means they know that the problem your app is being built to solve exists. Now, in the next segment, we're going to compare that to solution aware. There's another segment of your total addressable market that is solution aware. So not only do they know that the problem your app is being built to solve exists, they are also aware that there are solutions available to solve that problem. They may be users of certain solutions. Now, those solutions don't have to be other applications. They might be manual solutions, but they're aware that there are solutions. And now the third segment of the total addressable market is the segment that is you aware. So we have people who are problem aware, people who are solution aware, and people who are you aware. Now, most people building apps themselves are generally building apps for industries in which they have some sort of knowledge or experience. Maybe they're building an app for their own business and they want to then sell it to other businesses like theirs, right? And so by default, there are going to be people in the total addressable market who are you aware, right? If you are building an app for your industry or for companies within your industry, you have contacts with these other companies, for example. So they are you aware. When you are preparing to launch your app, it can be easy to get into the mindset of thinking that you need to try to reach anyone and everyone you possibly can. So your first instinct might be to go after your total addressable market. But the very first segment of your target market that you want to look to when aiming for your pilot launch is the segment that is you aware. So not problem aware, not solution aware, but you aware. So that means that your first user acquisition channel, the platform, the channel that you are using to find your initial users, should be ideally your immediate contacts, people you know or people you have connections to in some way, or people who you have really easy access to, maybe groups you're in, communities you're in, other businesses you're associated with, whatever that might look like for you. You want to be reaching out to the people who are you aware. That means they've already checked these boxes. They're already problem aware, they're already solution aware, and they are you aware. I can't finish this video without talking about one more book, and that is the one that is always up on the shelf here. It's called Finish What You Start. This is a really quick read. You can, read it in an afternoon or over a weekend. And this is one that I suggest you pick up when you are in the midst of your app's development, because one of the secrets to success is patience. It's pretty simple, but a lot of people lack patience. And when you're building an app and a business, you have to be playing the long game. It's not going to be an overnight success. And sometimes that can feel like a slog, especially when you are maybe a solo founder and you're doing this alone. And when you start to feel that way, and you will at some point, pick this up and read it. It's a great book to help re-inspire you when you're feeling a little bit burnt out and you need that spike in inspiration again to remember why you started all of this in the first place. This book is going to do that for you, so grab a copy of that as well. The very first launch of your no-code app will not be your last launch. At least it shouldn't be. I see so many people come into the app space and they start building their apps thinking that they only get one shot, that their very first launch is kind of like their make it or break it moment with their app. And to be honest, it puts a ton of pressure on their shoulders, but it also leads them in the wrong directions in terms of their development and launch strategy itself. Now, if you've stepped even an inch into the app space at this point, then you understand the concept of an MVP, or a minimum viable product. But what I see happening is not a full understanding of the purpose behind the MVP and what results that MVP should specifically drive for you as the app's founder. So despite what Eminem has told you, you do not only get one shot with your app. We preach day in and day out with our students and our clients and on this channel that you really want to launch early and quickly, and you want to execute a series of launches with each launch having its own individual goal. I want you to think about that in-between period from idea to finish line as a period containing 3 different phases. The first phase is validation, and the second phase is operations. The third phase is growth and scale. Now, we're looking at your app and your business as a whole as we consider these 3 phases. That product validation is not make it or break it. If you do not get the validation that you want, then it's change it, not break it, change it. And that's the disconnect that I see people having, is they think that first launch, if it's not perfect, then it's a failure. But that couldn't be further from the truth unless you let that become your truth. Think about trying to create the absolute perfect recipe. Okay, so you're in the kitchen, you got all your spices and your seasonings, you're over the stove, you're doing all the things. Well, you're not going to take all of the ingredients, the spices, the seasonings, and put everything in together right from the start that you think is going to be needed to create that perfect vision that you're thinking of for this meal or this recipe, right? You're going to start with a baseline. You're going to add a little bit in, you're going to taste it. You're going to let it simmer a little bit. You're going to taste it again. You're going to add a little bit more, right? And you're going to keep doing that. You're going to let some other people taste it. And then you're going to, you're going to keep doing that until you've gotten to that perfect point with the recipe. But your app is really no different, right? Don't add everything in right from the beginning, because then you're not going to be able to do your taste tests along the way, and you're not going to be able to make small adjustments toward the finish line. Instead, what you're going to have to do is backtrack. Now, if you do any cooking, once you add things in, it's pretty hard to backtrack unless you want to start over. And I unfortunately see people doing that way too often with their apps, because that's how they've approached it. They've done as much as they possibly can to launch at the finish line. And then when they realize that they can't make small adjustments because they launched too much, they have to scrap it all and they have to backtrack. And wow, that is a waste of time and money and energy. And I don't want to see you going through that too. So look, this launch that you are moving toward is not your make it or break it moment. I was having a conversation the other day with one of our private clients, and he was asking how you go about really just managing and growing your app after you launch, especially as a solo founder or a small team where resources are generally pretty thin. And his experience with project management, and this might be the same with you as well, is basically that, when you move forward with a new project and you launch that project or initiative, no matter what it's related to, the new project goes live, and then right afterwards, most of the time is spent iterating or fixing or changing things within that project or initiative. And it can easily end up being the case that there's no time left to add on new parts of the project or move forward with next steps in the roadmap. And so that project or that initiative kind of becomes stagnant and never actually reaches its full potential. So you might have had experience like this in the past as well, just with projects in general. And so when I was having a conversation with this client, he was kind of really just wanting to know how to make sure his app didn't end up becoming the same sort of thing. And you don't want that. You don't want to launch your app and then have to spend so much time fixing and changing the things you've already built that you have no time left to move forward with all the next features and all the next things that are going to add even more value into your app. So how do you fix that? The solution is tech debt. You are going to carry technical debt as the founder of your app. And tech debt is kind of like any type of debt. There is good debt and there's bad debt. You can leverage debt to help you move forward or accomplish more or see a greater return in another area. So tech debt is something that you are going to want to intentionally plan on leveraging after you launch your app. When you launch your app, there are going to be lots of things you need to fix. You are constantly going to be pulled in the direction of fixing or changing or iterating the existing features. And so you're going to find, again, especially if you're a solo founder or a small team, that you very rarely have time to actually move forward with other new value add features. And so tech debt is essentially when you make the intentional decision to leave some of those maybe issues or underperforming areas of your app in place so that you can save the time you would otherwise spend fixing those things and instead focus that time on those new additional value add features, knowing that the loss you are experiencing from leaving this one thing in place is is not going to be as detrimental compared to the gain you will experience if you move forward with this new additional value add feature. So you are essentially comparing the loss you could experience by leaving this one component in place versus the gain you will experience by adding this new component on. Now, something to keep in mind is you can't carry your debt forever. And so you want to make sure you pay that debt back before it balloons too big, right? So you intentionally carry the debt for a certain period of time until it is time to pay back that debt. When it gets to the point where that loss is going to now be too big for you to continue carrying it, what you're going to find is as soon as you launch your app, you're going to start getting feedback, and you are going to want to implement every single piece of feedback that you get. You're just going to want to, right? Because if people are telling you they want this over here, they want this change, you're going to want to give it to them because they're your users and they're on board your app now. But if you do that, you're going to be pulled in so many different directions that you're never going to move forward with actually growing your app. And so leveraging this tech debt is critical, especially when it's just you or you have a small team. It is absolutely critical. So make sure you move forward with this mindset. Now, understand exactly when you should start charging users. You also have to understand the different launch and growth stages your app is going to go through, and there are 4 of these. The first launch phase your app will go through is into its alpha testing stage. Now, alpha testing is purely to test for functionality. Can a user go from start to finish without any interruptions or hitting any bugs along the way? You should not be charging alpha users to test your app because the app won't necessarily be used in real life applications. So if you were building a project management app, for example, well, the app wouldn't be used to manage a full-blown project during alpha testing. The testing would focus specifically on whether or not the features actually work and function as they should, but not whether the solution itself solves the problem it has been designed to solve. The second phase you're going to go through is pilot testing. After you have successfully alpha tested your app and you know the functionality is sound, you will move to pilot testing. Pilot testing happens with prospective users within your target market, or with pilot test users rather, who are actually a part of your target market. They have the problem that you are aiming to solve. Now, you might charge users during pilot testing. Typically, you won't. And here's the reason. Pilot testing is really just a process of validating that the features you have created in your app are the right features to solve the problem your app has been designed to solve. So let's step back a minute and think about it this way. When you initially came up with your app idea, you went through a certain process to validate that app idea. So whatever you did to feel confident that you should actually invest your time, your money to build out the app. So whatever validation for the idea that you did that made you feel like, hey, this is a good idea to go ahead and build, right? That was an idea validation process. But at this point, when you are building out that initial idea, you're building out the product, you have to go through a product validation process, because the reality is your product is still a hypothesis. Right? Yes, you validated that idea, but it's still a hypothesis. So you need to validate that your hypothesis is in fact true. Now, the reason you wouldn't generally charge users to help you validate your feature set is because your hypothesis might not be true. And chances are, when you go through your pilot launch, you are going to get some feedback that causes you to iterate or potentially pivot in some ways. So it wouldn't necessarily make sense for a user to come on board, pay to use your app, when the feature set hasn't actually been validated that it's actually going to solve their problem, right? There's no value exchange there. Now, here is the tipping point. When you have gotten that product validation, that means you need to move straight into beta testing. Now, beta testing is to make sure the product is adoptable in real life applications on a consistent, ongoing basis. Pilot testing, make sure the features are right. Beta testing, make sure the features can be used and applied in real life scenarios and the app can be adopted by your users. Here is your litmus test. You should charge users to come on board your app when value is being exchanged. So if we go back to that project management example, well, if a user is coming on board and they're just setting up a project to help validate that feature set, but they're not managing one of the actual projects within their business, for example, with their entire team, they're not receiving value. Once they actually start managing a project with your app, they are receiving value. Charge them when they receive value. Now, the fourth and final stage that you'll go into throughout the growth of your app is your true rollout stage. So you have gone through your beta testing and validated that your app is adoptable in these real life applications. Well, now you're just going to expand from there. And this is when you roll out your app to become more widely available. It's out of testing and other users within your target market can freely come on board, not freely as in they don't pay, but they can come on board and continue using your app. Now, there are many other stages beyond that, but in simplifying it, this is that fourth stage, the rollout phase. And yes, you should be charging users during this rollout phase. Now, to be clear, when you're doing the beta testing and when you are in this rollout phase, when I say you should be charging users, that means you can also be doing things like free trials or offering a freemium product. So I'm not saying that there can't be any type of aspect of free, but they need to be committing to some sort of a plan that will lead them into becoming a paid user. No-code tools aren't by default going to do the work for you, right? No code does not mean no work. You're still going to have to build and test, sometimes seemingly endlessly, but that is the nature of development, whether you're using no-code tools or not. We've seen entrepreneurs and even many of our own clients completely change their career paths, launch brand new businesses that are wildly successful, or even create apps that help their existing businesses scale beyond what they could have previously imagined. No-code tools have helped our own business scale so much more than we otherwise would have been able to. So the next step is for you to join our free extended training over at coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop, where we're going to guide you through how to use no-code tools, how to use platforms like Bubble, how to strategically plan and roadmap your app, how to be successful with no-code tools, and how other entrepreneurs are currently launching and building and growing their own businesses with no-code tools. So head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop to join in on that extended training completely for free. We'll hope to see you there. And thanks so much for watching. We really hope this was helpful. If it was, we'd love for you to give the video a like down below. It helps us help even more people build and launch their no-code apps successfully. We'll see you in the next one.